They say you never truly know someone until you see how they treat you in your darkest hour. I learned this lesson on the morning I buried my father, when my boss called me at 6:47 a.m. and told me the deadline couldn't wait. We've all had bad bosses. The micromanagers who breathe down your neck. The credit stealers who parade your ideas as their own. The passive-aggressive ones who CC the entire company on your minor mistakes. But there's a special circle of hell reserved for bosses who forget that their employees are human beings with beating hearts, breaking points, and families they love more than any job could ever mean. This is the story of how I discovered my boss belonged in that circle, and how that discovery changed everything about the way I see work, loyalty, and my own worth. If you've ever felt trapped between duty and humanity, between keeping your job and keeping your soul intact, this story is for you. Because what happened to me could happen to anyone. And knowing how to recognize it, and what to do about it, might just save you from making the same mistakes I did. My father died on a Tuesday. I remember that detail with crystalline clarity, because Tuesdays were our days. Every Tuesday for the past 3 years, since his first stroke, I'd take my lunch break an hour early and call him. We'd talk about nothing and everything. The weather, my mother's garden, old memories of fishing trips and little league games, his physical therapy progress, my struggles at work. That Tuesday, the call went to voicemail. I told myself he was napping. The medication made him tired. I'd try again after my 2 p.m. meeting. I never got the chance. My mother called at 1:43 p.m. I was in the middle of reviewing quarterly projections with my boss, Richard, when my phone lit up with her contact photo. Richard shot me a look, the one that said this better be life or death. I let it go to voicemail. She called again. Immediately. That's when I knew. I have to take this, I said. My voice already unsteady. Richard's jaw tightened, but he waved his hand dismissively. I stepped into the hallway, my heart hammering against my ribs like it was trying to escape what was coming. Mom. The sound she made wasn't quite a word. It was grief-given voice, raw and animal and wrong. My mother, who had held our family together through 27 years of marriage, 2 miscarriages, my father's deteriorating health, and countless small tragedies, had finally shattered. He's gone, sweetheart. Your dad. He's gone. The world tilted. The fluorescent-lit hallway of Davidson and Associates blurred at the edges. I found myself sliding down the wall until I was sitting on the industrial carpet, phone pressed to my ear, listening to my mother cry, while accounting assistants stepped awkwardly around me. We didn't talk long. She needed to make more calls. The funeral home. My aunt in Pittsburgh. The church. I promised I'd be there within the hour. I told her I loved her. I told her dad loved her. I told her we'd get through this together. I was crying when I walked back into Richard's office. He was still reviewing the projections, red pen in hand, marking up the pages with aggressive slashes. He didn't look up when I entered. Richard, I said, my voice cracking. That was my mom. My father just died. I need to go. He set down his pen, slowly, like I'd just asked him to reschedule a coffee break, not respond to a family death. Today, he asked. I stared at him. Yes, today. Now. He exhaled through his nose. That specific sound of inconvenience that I'd heard 100 times before when someone's personal life dared to interfere with his schedule. The Hendricks presentation is Thursday, he said. We're nowhere near ready. I understand that, but my father just died. And I'm sorry for your loss. The words came out automatic, rehearsed, emptier than the pages he'd been marking up. But this presentation determines whether we secure their account. That's a $3.2 million contract. We can't afford to be unprepared. My brain struggled to process what I was hearing. Surely he wasn't suggesting what it sounded like he was suggesting. I'll be back after the funeral, I said. It's on Friday. I can work on the presentation over the weekend if needed. The Hendricks meeting moved up. It's now Wednesday afternoon. The air left my lungs. Wednesday? That's... Richard, the funeral is Friday. I need this week. I can give you Friday and Monday. He said it like he was being generous. Like he was doing me some enormous favor. But I need you Tuesday through Thursday. Non-negotiable. My father just died. I heard you. His tone had shifted to the clipped, final one he used to end discussions. And you can have Friday and Monday for the funeral and whatever you need to do. But right now, I need you focused. The presentation needs to be flawless, and you're the only one who knows the market analysis inside and out. I felt something crack inside me. Not break, not yet. Just crack. A hairline fracture in whatever part of me had still believed that this job, this company, this man, saw me as anything more than a productivity unit. I can't do this, I whispered. Yes, you can. He picked up his red pen again. You're stronger than you think. And your father would want you to be professional about this. The audacity of it. Invoking my father, a man he'd never met, never asked about, never acknowledged beyond the 2-line email I'd sent when Dad had his first stroke, physically staggered me. You didn't even know my father, I said. I know enough to know he raised someone competent. Don't let him down by falling apart now. That was the moment the crack widened into a fissure. I left his office. Not because he dismissed me, but because if I stayed one more second, I would say something I couldn't take back. Or worse, I'd break down completely, and I refused to give him the satisfaction of seeing me collapse. I gathered my things. Laptop, phone, the framed photo of my parents from their anniversary party last year. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely zip my bag. My coworker Jennifer caught me at the elevator. Hey, are you okay? Someone said. My dad died. Her face crumpled with sympathy. Oh my God. I'm so sorry. Do you need anything? Can I do anything? I shook my head. The elevator arrived, doors sliding open with a cheerful ding that felt obscene. Jennifer, if Richard asks where I went, tell him I said to find someone else for the Hendricks presentation. You're leaving? But I know what he'll do. The elevator doors started to close, and I hit the button to hold them open. I don't care anymore. That wasn't entirely true. I cared very much. I cared about my job security, my career, the health insurance that covered my mother's prescriptions, the 401k I'd been building for 5 years. I cared about all of it. I just cared about my father more. The drive to my parents' house took 43 minutes. I cried for 41 of them. My mother had aged a decade in the 6 hours since my father died. She sat at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd eaten thousands of meals, where I'd done homework while Dad read the paper, where they'd held hands over morning coffee for nearly 3 decades, looking lost in her own home. I don't know what I'm supposed to do, she said when I walked in. I called the funeral home like the hospital said, but then they started asking questions and I couldn't. What kind of casket? What kind of service? I don't know. How am I supposed to know? I pulled a chair beside her and took her hand. It felt small, papery, fragile in a way it never had before. We'll figure it out together, I said. One decision at a time. Over the next 3 days, I learned that death is expensive, complicated, and exhausting. There were forms to sign, obituaries to write, service programs to design, flowers to order, catering to arrange, people to notify. My father's brother flew in from Arizona. High school friends I hadn't seen in years sent condolences. The house filled with casseroles and sympathy cards and the overwhelming smell of lilies that I still can't stand to this day. Through it all, my phone buzzed with increasingly aggressive messages from Richard. Tuesday, 4:47 p.m. Need you to send over the Q3 analysis before end of day. Tuesday, 6:23 p.m. Haven't received the analysis. This is urgent. Tuesday, 8:15 p.m. I understand you're dealing with personal issues, but we have professional obligations. Please respond. I ignored them all. Wednesday morning, he called. I was at the funeral home, sitting across from a director who was walking us through casket options with practiced solemnity, when my phone lit up. I declined the call. He called again, and again. Finally, I excused myself and answered. Yes. Where the hell are you? No preamble. No acknowledgement of what I was going through. Just anger that I wasn't at his beck and call. I'm making funeral arrangements for my father. The Hendricks presentation is in 4 hours. I need those market projections. Something hot and sharp rose in my throat. Then use the ones from last quarter. Or have Jennifer pull them. Or do it yourself. This is unacceptable. You're jeopardizing a major account because you can't separate your personal and professional life. My father is dead, Richard. And that's unfortunate. But unless you're dead too, I expect you to fulfill your responsibilities. I hung up. My hands were shaking again. My mother's younger sister, Aunt Caroline, who'd been waiting with Mom in the casket viewing room, came out looking concerned. Everything okay? Fine, I lied. Just work stuff? Work? Honey, you just lost your father. Surely they understand. They don't. I turned my phone off completely. But it doesn't matter right now. Let's go pick out Dad's casket. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Choosing a box to put your father in. Deciding between oak and cherry, between brass and silver handles, between cream and white satin lining. Trying to imagine which one he would have wanted, as if he'd ever spent a moment of his life thinking about such things. We chose oak. Solid, simple, dignified. Like he was. That evening, we wrote his obituary. My mother, my uncle, and me, sitting around that kitchen table with old photo albums spread out, trying to capture 59 years of life in 300 words. He was a good man, my uncle kept saying. Just a really good man. It was true, but it felt insufficient. Dad was good, yes, but he was also funny in a quiet way, generous without making a show of it, patient with people who didn't deserve his patience. He taught me to ride a bike, to change a tire, to stand up for myself. He'd worked the same job for 32 years, not because he loved it, but because it provided for us. He'd sacrificed countless things he wanted so I could have things I needed. How do you fit all of that into an obituary? We did our best. We listed his surviving family, his education, his employment, his hobbies. We mentioned his love of fishing and his terrible dad jokes, and how he never missed one of my soccer games, even when they were an hour away. We invited people to celebrate his life at Stephen's funeral home on Friday at 2 p.m., with burial to follow at Oak Ridge Cemetery. Reading it back felt surreal. Past tense. Was. Loved. Enjoyed. Survived by. My mother cried while I called the newspaper to place it. Thursday morning, I turned my phone back on. 17 missed calls. 23 unread messages. All from Richard. The most recent one, sent at 11:47 p.m. the night before, made my blood run cold. We lost the Hendricks account. This is on you. We need to have a serious conversation about your future with this company when you decide to return. I stared at that message for a long time. Part of me wanted to respond. To defend myself. To explain that I'd been making funeral arrangements. That I'd been supporting my grieving mother. That I was trying to hold my own shattered heart together with duct tape and sheer force of will. But another part of me, a part that was growing stronger by the hour, understood that no explanation would matter to someone who fundamentally saw me as a resource to be exploited rather than a human being to be respected. I deleted the message. Friday arrived too quickly. I've been to weddings that were less orchestrated than my father's funeral. My mother wanted everything perfect. Dad would have hated the fuss. He was a jeans and flannel man who thought ties were instruments of torture, but Mom needed this. She needed the flowers arranged just so, the service program printed on quality cardstock, the reception catered by the Italian place where they had their first date. Grief demands control where it can find it. I wore the suit Dad helped me pick out for my first real job interview. He'd insisted we go to a proper men's store, even though I protested about the cost. You wear something good, you feel competent, he'd said, adjusting the shoulders while the tailor measured. And when you feel competent, you are competent. The suit fit differently now. Or maybe I did. The funeral home chapel was full. I hadn't realized how many lives my father had touched. His co-workers from the plant, spanning 3 decades of employment. Neighbors from our current house and the old one. Guys from his softball league. My high school teachers who remembered him from parent conferences. Our pastor, who Dad had helped rebuild the church storage shed last summer. Friends, family, acquaintances, and a few people I didn't recognize at all. They came because Dad was good. Because he showed up when you needed him. Because he remembered your kids' names and asked about your sick mother and helped you move without being asked and returned borrowed tools in better condition than he'd received them. They came because the world was measurably better with him in it and measurably worse now that he was gone. The service was beautiful in the way sad things can be beautiful. There were hymns Dad actually liked, not generic funeral dirges. There were stories that made people laugh through their tears. My uncle gave a eulogy that captured Dad's quiet dignity. My mother held it together until the pastor mentioned how Dad used to leave her love notes in her lunch bag, even after 27 years of marriage, and then she shattered in a way that made everyone in the chapel cry with her. I was asked to speak. I'd prepared remarks, carefully written, edited, practiced. But when I stood at the podium and looked out at all those people, at my father's casket draped with white roses, at my mother's devastated face, the prepared speech seemed insufficient. So I told the truth instead. My dad taught me that character is what you do when no one's watching, I began. He taught me that being a good person isn't about grand gestures. It's about small kindnesses, repeated daily. It's about showing up, being reliable, keeping your word, treating people with dignity, whether they're the CEO or the janitor. I paused, my voice catching. He taught me that your work doesn't define you. That jobs are what you do, not who you are. That at the end of your life, no one remembers how many hours you build or how many presentations you nailed. They remember how you made them feel. Whether you were there when it mattered. Whether you chose people over productivity. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it and kept talking. Dad never made a lot of money. He never got promoted past floor supervisor. He never got his name in the paper or won any awards. But he was rich in the ways that actually count. He was loved. He was respected. He was someone people could depend on. The phone buzzed again. Insistent. Invasive. And I think that's the only success. That really matters. I returned to my seat next to my mother. She squeezed my hand. That was perfect, she whispered. He would have been so proud. During the pastor's closing prayer, I glanced at my phone. For new messages from Richard. The first 3 were work-related. Updates on projects I wasn't even thinking about. Demands for reports I hadn't filed. Complaints about my absence. The 4th one made me see red. I've been patient with your situation, but this has gone on long enough. I need you in the office Monday morning at 8 a.m. sharp. We have damage control to do after the Hendricks disaster. Consider this your only warning. I read it twice. Each time feeling the disconnect between the reality of where I was, at my father's funeral, surrounded by everyone he loved, preparing to put him in the ground, and the reality of what this message represented. Richard didn't know or care that I was burying my father at this exact moment. Or maybe he did know and didn't care. Either option was damning. The service ended. We formed a procession to the cemetery, a long line of cars with headlights on in the middle of the day, driving slowly through town. People on the sidewalk stopped and put their hands over their hearts. A construction crew working on a storefront paused their equipment and removed their hard hats. Small acknowledgments of loss, of respect, of shared humanity. At the cemetery, we stood under a green tent while the pastor said final words I didn't really hear. I watched them lower my father into the earth. I watched my mother place a rose on his casket. I did the same, whispering goodbye to the man who taught me everything that mattered. My phone buzzed again. This time, I didn't even look. The reception was held at Mom and Dad's house. People brought food, as people do. Ham sandwiches and potato salad and cold cuts and cookies and more casseroles than we could fit in the refrigerator. The house filled with subdued conversation, the kind where people speak in respectful murmurs punctuated by occasional laughter when someone shares a good memory. I moved through it all in a fog. Accepted condolences. Thanked people for coming. Made small talk about nothing. The whole time, my phone kept buzzing in my pocket like an angry wasp. Around 7 p.m., after most people had left and my mother had finally laid down to rest, I checked my messages. 12 more from Richard. The last one, sent at 6:47 p.m., exactly 12 hours after the funeral began, was an email, CC to HR. Subject: unexcused absence and insubordination. This email serves as formal documentation of your unexcused absence from November 14th to 18th and your failure to respond to multiple direct requests from your supervisor during a critical business period. Your absence directly resulted in the loss of the Hendricks account, representing significant financial damage to the company. Your continued unresponsiveness and refusal to fulfill your professional obligations despite repeated attempts at contact demonstrate clear insubordination and lack of commitment to your role. You are required to attend a disciplinary meeting Monday, November 21st at 8 a.m. to discuss these performance issues and determine the status of your employment. Failure to attend this meeting will be considered voluntary resignation. Richard Morrison, Senior Director, Client Services, Davidson and Associates. I read it 3 times. Then I read it a 4th time, just to make sure I wasn't hallucinating from grief and exhaustion. Unexcused absence. My father's funeral was an unexcused absence. Insubordination. Setting boundaries around my father's death was insubordination. Voluntary resignation. Not showing up to be disciplined for mourning would be considered quitting. I felt something shift inside me. That crack that had started in Richard's office on Tuesday, that had widened throughout the week, finally broke completely. And on the other side of it was a clarity I hadn't felt in years. I was done. Not just with Richard. Not just with this particular crisis. I was done with the entire paradigm that said my worth was measured in productivity, that my humanity was secondary to the company's bottom line, that I owed more loyalty to a corporation than it would ever show me in return. My father had worked for 32 years at Thompson Manufacturing. He'd given them weekends and evenings and holidays. He'd injured his back on the job and returned after 4 weeks instead of the 12 his doctor recommended because they needed him. He'd trained new workers and mentored young supervisors and improved processes that saved the company hundreds of thousands of dollars. When he had his first stroke and had to take disability leave, they threw him a generic retirement party with a grocery store sheet cake and a plaque that spelled his name wrong. They gave him a gold watch that stopped working within a month. They moved on without him within a week, like he'd never existed at all. I'd watched him realize that 32 years of loyalty meant nothing to them. That he'd traded the best years of his life for a paycheck and a pat on the head and the empty promise that hard work and dedication mattered. Don't make my mistakes, he told me one Tuesday during our phone call, about 6 months ago. Don't give them everything. Keep something back for yourself. For the people who actually matter. I nodded and agreed, and then gone right back to checking emails at midnight and skipping lunches and staying late without overtime pay because I wanted to be seen as dedicated, as someone who went above and beyond, as someone valuable. But Richard had shown me what I was actually valued as, a tool. And when that tool wasn't immediately available when he needed it, not even for my father's funeral, I became expendable. I walked outside onto my parents' back porch. The November air was cold and sharp, and for the first time all week, I could breathe. I pulled out my phone and opened a new email. Subject: unexcused absence and insubordination. I stared at the blank message field for a long time. Part of me wanted to write an itemized rebuttal, to point out that I'd given notice of my father's death immediately, that I'd offered to work over the weekend, that I'd only asked for the bare minimum time to bury my parent, that his demands were unreasonable, inhumane, possibly illegal. Part of me wanted to write what I really thought about him as a manager, as a leader, as a human being. But in the end, I kept it simple. Richard, I will not be attending Monday's disciplinary meeting. I'm writing to inform you of my resignation, effective immediately. My final day was Friday, November 18th, the day I buried my father. I've spent 5 years at Davidson and Associates working weekends, skipping vacations, and prioritizing the company's needs over my own well-being. I did this because I believed in being professional, being dedicated, being someone the company could rely on. Your response to my father's death showed me that none of that mattered, that I could give everything and it still wouldn't be enough, that my humanity was an inconvenience to be managed rather than a reality to be respected. I've learned a valuable lesson this week. Loyalty to a company that doesn't value you as a person is just self-exploitation with extra steps. My father taught me that character is what you do when no one's watching. Your character was revealed when you thought no one else was paying attention to how you treated a grieving employee. I'm grateful for the lesson. I'm done being your tool. Please mail my final paycheck to my home address. I'll arrange to collect my personal items from the office at a time when you're not present. I didn't read it over. I didn't second guess it. I just hit send. Then I blocked Richard's number, turned off my work email, and went inside to sit with my mother. Monday morning, I woke up at 7:15 a.m. For a confused moment. Still half asleep, my brain followed its usual routine. Calculate commute time, mentally review the day's meetings, feel the familiar low-grade anxiety about what fires would need putting out. Then I remembered. No commute. No meetings. No fires. No job. I should have felt panicked. Untethered. Terrified about health insurance and mortgage payments, and the gap on my resume. Instead, I felt light. I made coffee. Real coffee, not the burnt swill from the office pot. Brewed properly in my French press with the good beans I saved for weekends. I made breakfast. Actual breakfast. Not a protein bar eaten at my desk between emails. I sat at my kitchen table and watched the morning sun through the window and realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd done this on a weekday. At 8 a.m., right when I should have been sitting in Richard's office being disciplined for daring to mourn, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Hello. Hi. Is this speaking with Alex? A woman's voice, professional but warm. This is Sarah Chun from HR at Davidson and Associates. Do you have a moment? Here it was. The official termination call. The stern lecture about professionalism and bridges burned and good luck finding a reference. Sure, I said. I'm calling about your resignation email. I wanted to reach out personally before we process everything. And also, I wanted to apologize. That wasn't what I'd expected. I saw the email chain between you and Richard, she continued. The whole email chain, including what he sent you on the day of your father's funeral. And I need you to know that his behavior was completely unacceptable and not representative of our company values. I said nothing. Waiting. I spoke with the executive team this morning. Richard has been placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation into his conduct. Several other employees have come forward with similar complaints about how he's treated them during personal crises. Is this the part where you ask me to reconsider my resignation? I asked. Actually, no. She sighed. Though I wish I could. I've read your file. You were an exceptional employee. But I also understand that after what Richard put you through, you'd have no reason to trust that things would be different. They wouldn't be, I said quietly. Richard was the worst of it, but he's not the only problem. The culture that allowed him to act like that rewarded him for squeezing everything out of people without caring what it cost them. That's bigger than one manager. You're right, she said. And for what it's worth, some of us are trying to change that. But change is slow, and you've already paid too high a price. We talked for a few more minutes. She explained my severance package, more generous than standard, she emphasized, given the circumstances. My accrued vacation time. My health insurance continuation options. The personal items from my desk would be shipped to me. Before we hung up, she said, "Your father would be proud of you for standing up for yourself." I wasn't sure that was true. Dad had always emphasized the importance of keeping your head down, not making waves, being professional no matter what. But maybe that's because he'd never learned to do otherwise. Maybe he'd wanted better for me than he'd managed for himself. "Thank you," I said. After the call ended, I sat with my coffee and tried to figure out what I was supposed to do with an unscheduled Monday morning. The answer came from my mother. "Come over," she asked when I called. "I'm sorting through your dad's things, and I could use the company. And maybe the help." So that's what I did. My father's workshop was exactly as he'd left it. Tools hung on pegboards in careful arrangement. Coffee cans full of sorted screws and nails. Half-finished projects that would stay half-finished forever. The smell of sawdust and machine oil, and the cherry pipe tobacco he'd pretended he didn't still smoke. Occasionally, "I don't know what to do with all this," Mom said, standing in the doorway like she wasn't sure she was allowed to enter. "Some of it's valuable, some of it's junk, but all of it was his." We spent the day sorting. Keep, donate, trash. Each item its own small grief. His good power drill. Keep, for when I needed it. His collection of C-clamps. Donate to the high school shop class he'd volunteered with. His coffee mug collection. 30 years of accumulated novelty mugs from places we'd visited. Trash, except for the one from our 2003 trip to Yellowstone, which Mom kept. In a drawer of his workbench, I found a folder of papers. Pay stubs from Thompson Manufacturing, spanning decades. Performance reviews, all positive. Letters of commendation. The retirement announcement with his name spelled wrong. And underneath it all, a single page, handwritten in Dad's blocky print. Things that matter. Family who loves you. Friends who show up. Work that means something. Time to do it all. Things that don't matter. Impressing people you don't like. Money you don't have time to spend. Jobs that don't care if you live or die. Proving yourself to folks who already decided about you. I showed it to Mom. She smiled through tears. He wrote that after his first stroke, when he realized how much time he'd wasted on things that didn't matter. "Did you know he told me not to make his mistakes?" I asked. He told me the same thing. About different mistakes, but the same idea. She folded the paper carefully. He learned late, but he learned. That's more than some people manage. We kept sorting. Found photos I'd never seen. Dad as a young man, impossibly young, holding me as a baby with a look of pure terror and joy. Dad and Mom on their wedding day, both of them skinny and laughing. Dad with his own father, who died when I was 4. "You know what I regret most?" Mom said, holding a picture of the 3 of us from my high school graduation. "All the times I told him to work late, to take the overtime, to put in for the promotion. I thought I was being supportive, but I was just encouraging him to give them more than they deserved." "You didn't know," I said. "Neither did he. Neither did you. That's how they get you." She set the photo aside. "They make it seem normal. Expected. Like you're the problem if you can't handle it. And by the time you realize it's not normal, you've already given them the best years of your life." We worked until evening. Sorted almost everything. Kept what mattered, let go of what didn't. Before I left, Mom hugged me at the door. "I'm glad you quit," she said. "Your father would have told you to stay, to be practical, to think about security. But secretly, he would have been glad too. He'd have wanted better for you than what he settled for." Driving home, I thought about that list Dad had written. Things that matter, things that don't. I'd spent 5 years focused entirely on the wrong list. It was time to fix that. 3 weeks later, I had my first job interview since resigning. I'd sent out applications strategically, focusing on smaller companies with good reputations for work-life balance. Companies where people stayed for decades not because they felt trapped, but because they felt valued. I'd rewritten my resume to emphasize outcomes over hours, impact over effort. The interview was with a consulting firm about a third the size of Davidson and Associates. The office was bright and informal, with natural light and plants and none of the industrial gray bleakness that had characterized my old workplace. The interview panel consisted of 3 people, the department head, a senior consultant, and someone from HR. They asked standard questions. My experience, my strengths, how I handled difficult clients, why I was leaving my previous position. I'd prepared for that last one. "I resigned," I said. "My father passed away in November, and my previous manager expected me to work through his funeral and the immediate aftermath. When I chose to be with my family instead, I was threatened with disciplinary action for insubordination." I watched their faces carefully. This was the moment that would tell me everything I needed to know about whether this company was different or just better at pretending. The HR person spoke first. "I'm sorry for your loss. That must have been incredibly difficult. It was, I said. And it taught me something important about the kind of company I want to work for. I'm looking for an employer who understands that their employees are human beings with lives outside work. That family emergencies aren't insubordination. That loyalty is a two-way street. The department head leaned forward. Can I tell you a story? I nodded. 6 years ago, my daughter was in a car accident. Serious injuries. I was in the middle of our biggest project of the year. Millions on the line, impossible deadlines, the whole thing. I called my boss from the hospital and told her I needed family leave. She paused. You know what she said? She said, go be with your daughter. We'll figure out the project. Family first, always. We did figure out the project. It was fine. And I learned that I was working for people who saw me as a person, not just a resource. That's why I'm still here. And that's the culture we try to maintain. The senior consultant added, we have unlimited bereavement leave here. Not 3 days or 5 days. Unlimited. Because grief doesn't work on a schedule, and we're not going to pretend it does. Something in my chest loosened. We talked for another 40 minutes. About the work itself? Yes, but also about expectations. Boundaries. Their policy on email after hours, discouraged. Their approach to vacation time. Everyone was required to take at least 15 days a year. Their philosophy on work-life balance. Not balance, integration. The idea that work and life don't have to be competing forces. At the end, the department head asked, do you have any questions for us? I had one. If I'm working on something important and my mother calls with an emergency, what happens? She didn't hesitate. You take the call. You go be with your mother. We figure out the work. That's not even a question. I got the job offer 2 days later. News travels fast in professional circles. Within a month of my resignation, I heard through the grapevine that 3 other people had quit Davidson and Associates, all citing Richard's management style. Sarah from HR had apparently made good on her promise to investigate, and the investigation had turned up a pattern of behavior going back years. Richard was quietly let go in January. Not fired, officially. That might have opened them up to lawsuits. Instead, he was offered a mutual separation agreement, with a severance package contingent on his silence. He landed at another firm within 6 weeks. I saw his announcement on LinkedIn. Excited to bring my leadership expertise to Morrison & Partners. The comments were full of congratulations. Great get for Morrison. Lucky to have you. Their gain, Davidson's loss. Nobody knew. Or maybe nobody cared. As long as he made money for the company, his lack of humanity was just tough management, or high standards, or results-oriented leadership. But something else was happening too. Jennifer, my former coworker, reached out in February. I need to tell you something, she said when we met for coffee. Your resignation email, the one you sent to Richard in HR? Sarah forwarded it to the executive team. And someone leaked it to the whole company. What? Not officially. But it's been circulating. People have been reading it. And it's starting conversations that we should have had years ago. She pulled out her phone and showed me an internal forum thread titled, Work-Life Balance at DA. Time for change? The thread had over 300 comments. People shared their own stories. The time someone was criticized for leaving. At 5 p.m. to coach their kids' soccer team. The colleague who came back from maternity leave to find her biggest accounts reassigned. The person who had a panic attack at their desk and was told to take a walk and get back to work. The countless missed dinners, abandoned hobbies, canceled vacations, strained relationships, all in the name of being dedicated. Some people think you're a hero, Jennifer said. Others think you burned a bridge unnecessarily. But everyone's talking about whether this is the kind of place they want to work. What do you think? I asked. She stirred her coffee. I think you reminded us that we have options. That we don't have to accept being treated like machines. That companies need us more than we need any one specific company. 3 weeks later, Jennifer put in her notice too. My father believed in loyalty. He believed you should show up on time, work hard, keep your promises, and honor your commitments. He believed in being someone people could count on. He practiced these values every day of his working life. What took me too long to understand, and what he learned too late, is that loyalty is supposed to go both ways. A company that demands your loyalty while showing you none in return isn't asking for loyalty. It's demanding subservience, exploitation, self-abandonment. I spent 5 years confusing the two. I thought working through lunch meant I was dedicated. I thought answering emails at midnight meant I was reliable. I thought never saying no meant I was valuable. What it actually meant was that I taught them I had no boundaries. And people without boundaries will always be asked to give more than they can sustain. The healthiest thing I did was quit. Not because I gave up. Not because I couldn't handle it. But because I finally understood that staying in a situation that demanded I shrink my humanity to fit their convenience wasn't loyalty, it was self-destruction. My father worked until his body gave out. Until stress and exhaustion and 32 years of dedication culminated in a stroke that stole 2 years of his life and eventually killed him. I think about that sometimes. About how many extra years he might have had if he'd worked less. If he'd guarded his time and energy the way he guarded his tools, carefully, knowing they had value, knowing they could be depleted if used carelessly. But I also think about the list I found in his workshop. The one he wrote after his first stroke, when he finally understood what mattered and what didn't. He figured it out. Late, but he figured it out. And he tried to pass that wisdom to me, even if he struggled to model it himself. Don't make my mistakes, he said. I'm trying, Dad. I'm really trying. I've been at Sterling Consulting for 3 months now. The work is similar to what I did at Davidson and Associates. Client analysis, market research, strategy development. But everything else is different. I leave at 5:30 p.m. most days. Not because I'm lazy or uncommitted, but because the culture actively discourages overwork. My manager, Teresa, will literally message people at 6 p.m. and tell them to log off if she sees them online. Tired employees make bad decisions, she says. And bad decisions cost more than paying for adequate staffing. I took a full week off in February. Actual vacation, where I didn't check email once. When I came back, nobody had guilt me about it. Instead, Teresa asked if I felt recharged. Last month, a colleague's husband had emergency surgery. She left mid-meeting, barely coherent with worry. Teresa immediately reassigned her projects and told her not to even think about work until her husband was stable. That could have been handled differently, someone said after she left. Yes, Teresa replied. We could have handled it without humanity. But then we'd be a different kind of company. And frankly, a worse one. The work still matters here. We still have deadlines and difficult clients and projects that require creativity and effort. But there's an understanding that we're humans doing work, not work being done by human-shaped machines. I'm not pretending it's perfect. There are still stressful weeks. Still frustrating moments. Still days when I'm tired and wonder if I'm doing enough. But when my mother called last week because she was having a bad day missing Dad, I took the call. I talked to her for 30 minutes. I told my team I needed to leave early to have dinner with her. Nobody questioned it. Nobody made me feel guilty. Nobody suggested I was being unprofessional. They just said, give her our best. See you tomorrow. That's the difference. Sometimes I imagine what I'd say if I could talk to Richard now. Not to change his mind. I understand now that people like him don't change, or at least not because of conversations with people they've already dismissed. But just to say what I wish I'd said before I left. Richard, I don't think you're evil. I think you're something worse. You're normal. Normal in a culture that treats people as resources to be optimized. Normal in a system that rewards extraction over sustainability. Normal in an environment where profits matter more than people, where quarterly results matter more than quality of life, where looking busy matters more than being human. You're not an aberration. You're a product. You're what happens when we build entire industries on the premise that work is the most important thing in life, that sacrifice equals virtue, that boundary setting equals weakness. The problem isn't just that you asked me to work through my father's funeral. The problem is that you genuinely believed that was reasonable. That somewhere in your development as a manager, you absorb the idea that employees' humanity is an obstacle to be managed rather than a reality to be honored. You learned that from someone. Probably someone who learned it from someone else. A long chain of normalized dysfunction. Passed down like a hereditary disease. And you'll probably teach it to someone else. Some young manager who's trying to prove themselves, who watches how you treat people and thinks this is what success looks like. They'll learn from your example. And the cycle continues. But here's what I want you to know. Every person who quits because of you is a win, not a loss. Not for you, for them. They're breaking the cycle. They're refusing to accept that this is just how things are. They're choosing themselves over your approval. And eventually, you'll run out of people willing to be treated the way you treat them. Maybe not soon. There are always more people who need jobs, who can't afford to quit, who haven't learned yet that they deserve better. But eventually, because the world is changing, Richard. Slowly, but it's changing. People are starting to understand that a job that requires you to abandon your humanity isn't a job worth keeping. That companies that demand everything and give nothing aren't owed loyalty. That the way you treat people in crisis isn't an exception to your character. It is your character. I hope someday you understand that. I hope someday you're in a position where you need compassion, flexibility, basic human decency. And I hope someone gives it to you even though you didn't give it to others. Because that's what actual good people do. But until then, I'm grateful for the lesson you taught me. Some situations are improved by leaving them. So thank you, Richard, for showing me exactly what I don't want to be. For making the decision to quit so clear that I couldn't rationalize staying. For being so consistently, predictably terrible that you burned away any guilt I might have felt about choosing myself. You meant to teach me a lesson about professionalism and dedication. You succeeded, just not the lesson you intended. Of course, I'll never actually send this. Richard wouldn't care. People like him rarely do. But writing it helped me. Helped me crystallize what I learned from that whole nightmare experience. And maybe it'll help someone else who's in a situation like I was, trying to decide if what they're experiencing is normal workplace stress or actual dysfunction disguised as professionalism. Here's how you know the difference. Normal workplace stress. Busy seasons exist. Deadlines matter. Sometimes you work late to meet genuine emergencies. But it's temporary, acknowledged as exceptional, and appreciated. Dysfunction disguised as professionalism. Every week is a crisis. Every project is an emergency. Every boundary is met with guilt or threats. And you're made to feel like you're the problem for not keeping up with unsustainable expectations. If you're reading this and thinking about your own job, your own boss, your own situation, ask yourself, would they let you bury your father? Would they treat a family emergency like an inconvenience? Would they threaten you for being human at the worst moment of your life? If the answer is yes, or even maybe, you're in the wrong place. And you deserve better. 6 months after quitting, I got an unexpected email. The sender was someone I didn't know, Marcus Chun, one of the people who'd been on the Hendricks presentation that I'd failed to complete because I was burying my father. Subject line, thank you. Dear Alex, we've never met, but I feel like I owe you an explanation and an apology. I'm the executive who led the Hendricks team that Davidson and Associates was pitching to last November. The one your former boss said you lost because of your absence. That's not true. We didn't choose DNA not because their presentation was incomplete. Frankly, we'd already decided they weren't the right fit before the meeting even happened. Their proposal was overpriced, their timeline was unrealistic, and every interaction with their team felt transactional and cold. The meeting just confirmed what we already knew. We went with Sterling Consulting instead. I didn't think much about it until last week, when I was having lunch with a colleague who happens to work at Sterling. She mentioned they'd hired someone who'd had a terrible experience at their previous firm, someone who'd been threatened with termination for attending their father's funeral. She mentioned your name. I put the pieces together. I'm writing because I need you to know, you didn't lose that account. Richard lost it long before your father died, and he used you as a scapegoat to avoid taking responsibility for his own failures. I've been in business for 23 years. I've worked with hundreds of companies and thousands of employees, and I can tell you with absolute certainty, companies that treat their people the way Richard treated you inevitably produce inferior work. Because good work comes from people who feel valued, not people who feel terrorized. We chose Sterling because they treated our meetings like partnerships, not transactions. Because they listened instead of just pitching. Because every interaction felt human. Everything I've heard about your experience suggests you're exactly the kind of person who would thrive in that environment and struggle in the one Richard created. So thank you for having the courage to quit, for refusing to accept mistreatment as normal, for setting an example that other employees are now following. The business world needs fewer Richards and more people like you. I hope you're doing well. And I'm sorry about your father. Best regards. Marcus Chun. I read the email 3 times. Then I called my mother and read it to her. She cried. Your father would be so proud of you, she said. Not for the job stuff. For knowing when to walk away. For valuing yourself. For learning what he couldn't. That evening, I printed the email and put it in the folder where I kept the list my father had written. Things that matter, things that don't. I added a line to his list. People who see you as a person, not a profit center. And underneath, my own addition. The courage to leave when you're not seen. My story isn't unique. In the year since I quit, I've heard from dozens of people with similar experiences. The woman who was fired for missing work during her husband's cancer treatment. The man whose boss called him selfish for taking paternity leave. The person who had a miscarriage and was back in the office the next day because they were afraid to ask for time off. These stories are everywhere once you start listening. They're whispered in break rooms and vented in online forums and shared in therapy sessions. They're the hidden cost of a work culture that's fundamentally broken. But something's shifting. The pandemic accelerated it, forcing companies to acknowledge that maybe we don't need to be in the office 60 hours a week, that maybe productivity isn't measured by surveillance, that maybe people do their best work when they're not exhausted and resentful. 1 year later, Today is Tuesday. I took my lunch break early and drove to Oak Ridge Cemetery. To the oak tree where we buried Dad, where a simple headstone now marks the spot where he rests. I brought flowers, not lilies, which I still can't stand, but the wildflowers he loved from the meadow behind their house. I sat on the grass and told him about my year, about the new job, where I'm respected and valued, about how Mom is doing, struggling some days, finding joy on others, healing slowly in the uneven way grief allows, about Jennifer and the 3 other people from Davidson and Associates who've left and found better situations, about Marcus Chin's email and the validation it brought, about how I'm learning to say no, to leave work at work, to prioritize the things that matter over the things that just seem urgent. You'd be proud of me, I said. Or maybe you'd think I'm being naive, that I'm not understanding how the real world works. But I think you'd secretly be glad. I'm not repeating your mistakes. The wind rustled through the oak leaves. I like to imagine that was him, agreeing. I forgive you, by the way, I added, for teaching me to be so loyal to work. You didn't know better. Nobody taught you differently. You were doing the best you could with what you knew. I stayed for an hour just sitting, thinking about everything that had changed in the past year, everything I'd learned. Before I left, I pulled out the list I'd found in his workshop. Things that matter, things that don't. I'd laminated it so I could carry it without it falling apart. I read it aloud, there in the cemetery, like a prayer or a promise. Then I added one more line in permanent marker, having the courage to walk away. What I want you to know, if you're reading this, maybe you're in a situation like I was. Maybe you have a boss like Richard, a job that demands more than you can sustainably give, a workplace that treats your humanity as an inconvenience. Maybe you're reading this at your desk, on your lunch break, that's not really a break because you're still checking email. Or at 11 p.m., trying to finish something that's due tomorrow because urgent somehow means your evening doesn't matter. Or on your phone in the bathroom, stealing a moment of peace from a workplace that's slowly grinding you down. Maybe you're thinking, but I can't quit. I need the health insurance. I have a mortgage. I have student loans. I have people depending on me. I can't afford to walk away. I understand. I really do. There are legitimate reasons why leaving isn't always immediately possible. Financial obligations are real. Responsibilities are real. Fear is real. But here's what I want you to understand. The cost of staying in a toxic workplace isn't just measured in money. It's measured in your health, both physical and mental. In your relationships with family and friends who get the depleted, stressed, resentful version of you instead of the whole person you could be. In the hobbies you've abandoned, the dreams you've deferred, the person you're becoming in service to a company that would replace you within a week if you die tomorrow. It's measured in the lesson you're teaching yourself, that your worth is conditional, that your humanity is optional, that you don't deserve better. And it's measured in the time you're losing, time you'll never get back, time you could be spending on things that actually matter. If you can't quit right now, start planning your exit. Update your resume. Build your savings. Network. Apply for other jobs. Set a timeline. 6 months, a year, whatever you can manage. But start moving toward the door, even if you can't walk through it today. And while you're still there, practice boundaries. Start small. Leave at 6 p.m. instead of 7. Take your full lunch break. Let a non-critical email wait until morning. See what happens. Often, the consequences we fear are less severe than the ones we're already living with. Not everyone will understand. Some people will tell you to be grateful you have a job, to tough it out, to stop being so sensitive. Those people either haven't experienced what you're experiencing, or they've normalized their own dysfunction so thoroughly that they can't recognize yours. Find the people who say, "That's not okay. You deserve better. How can I help?" Those are your people. 2 years later, I don't think about Richard anymore. Or rather, I do, but not with anger. More with a kind of anthropological curiosity. I've been at Sterling Consulting for 2 years now. I got promoted 6 months ago. I manage a small team, and I'm trying very hard to be the kind of manager I needed when I worked for Richard. Last week, one of my team members, Sophie, came to me at 4 p.m. looking wrecked. "My grandmother's in the hospital," she said. "They don't think she's going to make it. I need to drive to Philadelphia tonight. I'm so sorry. I know the Morrison report is due Friday." I held up my hand. "Stop. Go be with your grandmother. Send me the Morrison files, and I'll finish the report. Or I'll push the deadline. Or I'll figure something out. But you need to go. Are you sure? Because I can. Sophie, go. Family first. Always." She teared up. "Thank you. I was so scared you'd be mad." That broke my heart a little. That she'd learned to expect that response. That somewhere in her work history, she'd been taught that family emergencies were inconveniences to apologize for. I'm not mad. I'm human. Go. She left. I redistributed her work. We pushed the deadline by 3 days. The client understood. Nothing exploded. Because treating people with humanity doesn't destroy businesses. It builds them. Sophie came back the following week. Her grandmother had pulled through. She thanked me about 8 times. You don't need to thank me, I said. I just treated you like a person. That's baseline decency, not special accommodation. You'd be surprised how rare that is, she said. I wouldn't actually. But I'm glad it's becoming less rare, one manager at a time. My mother sold the house last month. Too many memories, she said. Too much space for one person. Too many reminders of Dad in every room. She bought a smaller place closer to town. A condo with a little balcony where she started a garden. She's dating someone, a widower from her book club who makes her laugh and doesn't try to replace Dad, just compliments the space he left. Your father would want this, she told me when she announced she was selling. He'd want me to live, not just exist in a museum of our life together. She's right. Dad would want that. Just like he'd want me to have learned from his mistakes instead of repeating them. We have dinner every Tuesday. Sometimes we talk about him. Sometimes we don't. But we show up for each other, and that's what matters. I ran into Jennifer last month at a conference. She's thriving. Got promoted twice at her new company. She's engaged now, planning a wedding for next spring. She looks lighter somehow, like she's not carrying the weight of impossible expectations anymore. Remember when we thought it was normal? She asked over conference center coffee. The Sunday night dread. The constant stress. The feeling like we were never doing enough. I remember thinking that's just what jobs were, I said. Same. And now I can't believe I stayed as long as I did. We talked about the exodus from Davidson and Associates. 7 people left in the 18 months after I quit. The company had to hire a consultant to figure out their retention problem. The consultant's report, which Jennifer saw through a still-employed friend, basically said, your managers treat people terribly, and you need to change your entire culture. Davidson and Associates responded by implementing a mandatory training module on work-life balance that everyone had to complete during their lunch hour. Some things never change. This story is dedicated to everyone who's ever had to choose between being a good employee and being a good human. May you always choose humanity. And may you work for people who never make you choose at all.